Hi, this is Corey Johnston, and in today's lesson, we're going to be discussing the 7th chapter in the book of Ecclesiastes. Ecclesiastes belongs to the genre of Old Testament wisdom literature. They reflect the mature musings of Solomon, presumably the wisest man who ever lived. And there's a lot more we can say in preamble, but not without. There's 29 verses in this chapter. We'd like to, if possible, to elaborate on each one. But some themes that we should recognize in advance. They touch much on the theme of death and life and wisdom. So we want to bear that in mind before we approach the text itself, in the opening verse of which reads, "A name is better than precious oil, in the day of death than the day of one's birth." A name can translate as reputation. That's what he means by name. So a reputation is to be treasured above that of a precious commodity such as oil. And the day of death, now he describes 2 days in every person's life: the day in which a name is given and the day in which one's name appears in the obituary section. And what we do in between those days determines the worth and value of a life and the reputation we acquire in the process thereof, which is ultimately worthier than precious commodity of oil. "It is better to go to the house of mourning than to the house of feasting, for that is the end of all men, and the living take it to heart." So he's comparing two possible places: the funeral home, and feasting is alternately translated as mirth. So the house of the party, where joyous, raucous living is to be the dwelling place of the fool, where the wise person knows better. They're cognizant and aware that this life will not last forever, so they attend funerals in mind, respectful of the fact that one day it will be them. And the living take it to heart. That means they take the fact that this life will not last forever to heart, and it saturates their mind and ultimately alters their perspective on life and makes them make wiser choices on a day-to-day basis. "Sorrow is better than laughter, for by the sadness of the face the heart becomes better." Now this is curious because sorrow is invariably attached to a negative emotion, whereas laughter is invariably positive. Yet we learn more about ourselves and our Maker, and without sorrow, life would be meaningless. And sorrow also incidentally enables us to appreciate and value the moments of laughter and joy. And that is what he means by the heart becomes better. Also, the mind is made sharper. We learn more about ourselves in sorrow than we do from the absence of it. A life without sorrow is a pleasant fiction and an impossible delusion. And the Jews were very much distinct amongst the ancient worlds. The Greeks and Romans sought to avoid sorrow like the plague, and the Eastern religions, more chronologically adjacent to it, their religions taught to elevate to transcend the sorrows of life. But Judaism and Christianity, by attachment, teaches that there is value in a refining quality in sorrow and suffering. "The heart of the wise is in the house of mourning, but the heart of fools is in the house of rejoicing." Again, the dichotomy between the funeral home and the party place. So the wise person is more at home in a funeral house because he's aware of the fact that life is not all, that this life, one, will not last forever, and that is not all that there is, because there is the resurrection and immortality. And how we spend our life in this school called life, which is our mortal existence, determines whether we enter that blessed abode. Whereas if we spend inordinate amounts of time partying and pursuing pleasure, then we forfeit that exalted abode. "It is better to hear the rebuke of the wise than for man to hear the song of fools." Now, many of us would rather be flattered than told the truth, and a wise person will tell us the truth. They'll point out our shortcomings, and it's not with any insulting intent. It is actually instructive to embrace the criticisms of wise people, whereas the Song of Fools, they like to sing their praises, but it is always, always, always with ulterior motives in mind. They avoid the truth because flattery is never without a deceptive intent, and that's why fools prefer to give praise and bask in praise. So it is a sounder long-term investment to invest ourselves in the criticisms of wise and caring friends than fleeting friends who only praise us with dishonest intent, essentially. For as the crackling of thorns under a pot, so is the laughter of fool. That too is futile. Now, futile is alternately translated as vanity, and this is, if anything, the all-encompassing theme of the book of Ecclesiastes, and he compares the laughter of fools, which is, now there are a few things in life which determine the quality of one's character quite as what make one's laugh and versus what makes one cry. And we've already touched on the crying aspect, but this verse solely pertains to laughter, and people who laugh at the expense of others and at profane and toilet humor either lack character, culture, or both. So it's analogous to crackling of thorns, that being an unpleasant sound. For oppression makes a wise one mad, and a bribe destroys the heart. Now, many honest people are made dishonest by bribes. It's a temptation that those who operate in positions of responsibility and power, it's a temptation they must invariably contend with. That is the way of any system of governance in any civilization. But oppression makes a wise one mad, and this is not necessarily oppression, self-endured oppression, but the impression of others. We cannot look at the fact that others are oppressed, especially if we were a king, as is Solomon, with benign neglect. We are to be the change. We are to implement the needed change in as much as we are powerful to do it by every fair and legal means. The end of a matter is better than its beginning. The patient in spirit is better than the proud in spirit. Now, many glorious endings begin in painful beginnings, but when it is aligned towards a purpose, the incidental pain, persecution, slights, and mockery, and deficiencies we encounter en route is made worth it by the end in sight, provided that it is a worthy end. So anything in life that is worthwhile must he who is prepared to lay hold of it or attain it must be prepared to endure pain in the process thereof. And this requires patience, of course, and pride is what C.S. Lewis called the vice which leads to all other vices. So it is an emotion, an ugly emotion, which we are to avoid like the plague, and the remedy for this is patience. Now, God's delays are not God's denials. We have plenty of promises in Scripture. Not all of them are meant to manifest immediately or even in this life, but we do have faith that they will be realized in God's time. And the trick to laying hold of the purpose of anything in life is to align one's calendar with the one who created and transcends time. Do not be hasty in your spirit to be provoked, for wrath rests in a bosom of fools. There is no more obvious indicator of a foolish person than easily provoked to wrath, because wrath is not a solution-oriented emotion. It invariably adds problems on top of problems and does very little to fix them, and it is functionally incompetent to fix. So wrath betters nothing and and makes no one better, be it the wrathful or the targets of their wrath. And hastiness of spirit is rooted in wrath. Do not say, why were the former days better than these? For it is not wise of you to have asked about this. Now, there's a tendency in all of us to long for the good old days with nostalgia, but ultimately we paint an unrealistically romantic picture of how good the past was, which seldom matches the reality. So the trick is not to long for the good old days, but to make today a good old day one can look forward to in the future. So we're to be mindful of the present and with the future in mind, and not neglect the past, but not dwell excessively in it. We are creatures of time, invariably at the mercy of the present moment. We can never live in the past or the future. It is physically impossible to, but we can benefit from them both, and they can both dramatically alter our present situation. Wisdom is good with an inheritance and an advantage to those who see the sun. This is self-evident. Wisdom cannot be inherited as easily as wealth. Now, invariably, wise people, there is such a thing as DNA. So intelligent people are more likely to be products of intelligent persons, but there's no guarantee for that. And it's an inheritance we are to strive to give to our children. Now, there are countless locations, numerous, too numerous to list, which instruct us with the injunction of training the next generation to be good and wise and knowledgeable in theological matters, which are spiritually significant. For wisdom protects as silver protects, but the advantage of knowledge is that wisdom gives life to those who have it. So wisdom is not literally a source of life, but it gives life meaning. That's what he means by, or what I think he means by by giving life to wisdom, giving life to the beholder of it. It gives their life meaning, because a life lived without wisdom is really no life at all, and having lived a life guided by wisdom, a mind once awoken seldom reverts to its restful state. So that's something we are to guard and protect, and it protects us. Silver protects. Silver can protect us financially. Wisdom can protect us spiritually and intellectually. See the works of Elohim, for who is able to make straight what he has made crooked? This is the futility of imposing our own judgment against one whose judgment is perfect. Now, everything in the universe was made according to a wise and good design, and of course everything in the world is imperfect, but that is not the Creator's making, it is our making. Sin has marred his perfect creation, and it is also sinful to think that we know better than the Creator. So we are to, I believe, to reduce it to a serenity prayer. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. So it's really incumbent that we are wise to know the difference, because we are to change that which is in our power to change, but not everything is meant for us to change or is even in our power to change. Be glad in the day of prosperity, but in the evil day take note that Elohim has also appointed the one as well as the other, so that the man should not uncover whatever is after him. So there is blessing and benefit and value for days of prosperity in as much as adversity. We learn more about ourselves and our Maker in the days of adversity, and they also enable us to appreciate the prosperity, because if life was an unending continuum of blessings and prosperity, we would become spiritually spoiled and would not rely on our Maker in prayer and would not seek him out for the wisdom. And then when adversity strikes us unexpectedly, we would have no recourse or resources for which to turn to make the best of a situation which can conceivably make the best of us. I have seen it in all my days of futility. There is a righteous one perishing in his righteousness, and there is a wicked one living long in his evil. This is a theme common through scriptures. Most prominently, or what most immediately springs to mind, is Psalm 73, when Asaph bemoans the prosperity of the wicked and the suffering of the righteous. And this is a theme which has a genre known as theodicy, which is the relationship of the righteous to suffering, which invites a host of complexities, the details of which we honestly don't have enough time to get into, but is ultimately something very much worth picking up on a future date. So until then, stay tuned until next time. Thank you so much. Bye-bye. We didn't make it as far as we anticipated, but these discourses have a life of their own, and there was more to say than I maybe should have said. But the good news is we can always continue the same chapter at a future date, so that's something we might do. So thank you so much. Stay tuned for next time. Bye-bye.